Senator O'Sullivan. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I want to make 4 points. In Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, we are strong supporters of the need to invest in infrastructure of all kinds that becomes productive and adds to our wealth. But I am very, very doubtful about this Labor motion. As a 17-year-old, I can remember Gough Whitlam saying at the end of his first year that he had spent $50 million on the Aboriginal people in Australia. And he proudly boasted that that was double the previous government in its last 12 months under William McMahon. And he implied that by spending more, it benefited the people. What we've seen now is that welfare, according to many Aboriginal people, has effectively hurt the Aboriginal communities. So money doesn't translate, or spending of money doesn't necessarily translate into beneficial spending or investing in people or infrastructure. It is the quality of spending that matters, the quality of spending of taxpayer funds, not the quantity. And that means we need cost-benefit analysis to justify any expenditure. And what I've seen since in the brief period that I've been here, 3 months, there's very little, if any, cost-benefit analysis used. Quite often, we see spending used as window dressing to promote fantasies, to promote propaganda, to promote reputations. That's the first point. Spending doesn't necessarily translate into effective spending. The second point I raise is competitive federalism is at the heart of our Constitution. The states are responsible for transport and transport infrastructure. Unfortunately, we have gone so far away from our Constitution that competitive federalism is dying. The Commonwealth has made a mess of education. The Commonwealth has made a mess of health and a mess of the environmental stewardship. These are just to name a few. We need to give back taxation to the states, let them be responsible for spending, and then we will have far greater accountability, instead of the Commonwealth raising all the funds. We need to restore our Constitution. And it reminds me of a very effective mayor that I met recently while travelling in southwest outback Queensland, Tyson Golders from the Maranoa Shire Council, the mayor at Roma. And he came to become mayor on a ticket of handing the power back to the councils, back to the local shires. And that is difficult under the state government laws, but that's something he's working on, because he has councillors who have their positions as a result of the amalgamation, so they're hanging on to the power. But nonetheless, we need to do what he's doing, taking the regional council and sending the decisions back to the people in the shire councils. And we need to do the same, take what's currently used at federal government and move it back to the states. And of course, the Federation was formed with the idea of protecting the smaller states that can't raise the funds. That's a legitimate need, and that has to be addressed. But we need to restore responsibility and accountability in the state governments and let them fund. The third point I want to make is that South Australia and Victoria now illustrate what is happening under the spend without accountability the reputation of these states. The lights have gone out in South Australia. And the last thing we need is a Commonwealth government to bail them out. And now we're talking about a massive federal control or federal oversight over energy. The last thing we need. Queensland has the world's best and cleanest coal. And yet the Palaszczuk government, another Labor government, is shutting down the coal industry. It refuses to invest in coal-fired power stations when we need that. The cheapest and most reliable form of electricity, the most stable and the most secure. And the Palaszczuk government, sitting on a treasure trove of coal, won't use it. And yet we've seen South Australian Labor government dynamite their last coal-fired power station, shut down their coal mines. We've seen them rely now on Victoria, and yet Victoria now wants to shut down its Hazelwood plant. So everyone then from South Australia and Victoria will be needing power from Queensland and New South Wales, which will drive up our prices. We need to stop this stupidity, and we must not continue to subsidise stupid state behaviour, fraudulent, dishonest state behaviour, irresponsible state behaviour that is hurting the citizens of South Australia and Victoria. We have seen Labor states spend money on desalination plants. This is my fourth point. That those plants, with the exception of one of them, have never been used. We have spent billions of dollars, I believe the figure is around $10 billion, and they've never been used. We have achieved nothing. That's not investment in the future, that is waste. If we don't get a return on our investment, have nothing to show for it, then we will go broke. But we'll have the Greens parroting on about renewable energy and water from desal plants that never materialises. We need to fix the systems in this parliament to ensure accountability, to stop the waste of funding, and instead of speaking to sell, more politicians in this building need to listen to learn. Instead of using taxpayer funds as bidding on an auction for reputation, for votes, we need to restore accountability, cost-benefit analysis. We need to restore competitive federalism. We want productive spending that is investment. So I don't accept the Labor Party's motion that we need to increase spending and that the Turnbull government, for all its other ills, for all its many ills and shortcomings, cannot be labelled incompetent or lacking simply because it hasn't spent enough money in the Labor Party's eyes, because they are spendthrift eyes. I disagree with the Labor Party motion. Thank you, Mr. Acting Deputy President.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.